My name is Ellie. I'm 30 years old, a single mom to twin boys. I work the night shift at a rundown diner in Portland with a heart that's failing and a secret I've never told their father. One stormy night, I collapsed on the diner floor, and the only name I'd ever left on my emergency contact card was the man who disappeared from my life 5 years ago. Now, before I share the rest of this story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit like and subscribe if you've ever pushed through hard times for your family. Trust me, you're going to want to hear what happens next. The coffee stains on my apron looked like tiny islands in the fluorescent glare of the diner. 3 a.m. in Portland, and the rain hammered the windows like it had something personal against the glass. My hands shook slightly as I poured another cup for the trucker in booth 4. Not from the cold, but from the flutter in my chest that had been getting worse lately. Mom's working late again, I'd told Aiden and Noah before leaving them with Mrs. Chen downstairs. They'd nodded, already used to the routine at 5 years old. Too used to it. The guilt sat heavy in my stomach, right next to the secret I carried about my heart condition. No insurance, no surgery, no time. After my shift, I collected my boys from Mrs. Chen's couch where they'd fallen asleep watching cartoons. Noah stirred as I lifted him. Lighthouse tonight, Mama? It's raining, baby. We like rain, so we drove to the abandoned lighthouse on the Oregon coast, our special place. I'd discovered it during one of those nights when the walls of our studio apartment felt like they might crush us. The boys thought it was our secret castle. They didn't need to know it was where we went when I couldn't afford to run the heater. Inside the lighthouse, I spread our sleeping bags on the wooden floor. The twins curled against me as I opened our book of fairy tales. The pages soft from so many readings. But tonight, my voice caught mid-sentence. A sharp pain bloomed across my chest, stealing my breath. Mama? Aiden's green eyes, so like his father's, watched me with concern. Just tired, sweetheart. I forced a smile, tucking them closer. Through the lighthouse window, Portland's lights blurred in the rain. 5 years since Graham. 5 years of that unsent letter burning a hole in my wallet. His name the only emergency contact I'd never been brave enough to use. Tell us about before, Noah whispered, his favorite bedtime request. Before. When I was 25 and stupid enough to believe in forever. I'd been a PR intern in San Francisco, fresh out of college, surviving on ramen and ambition. Graham Carter walked into our firm's conference room on a Tuesday that smelled like burnt coffee and possibility. "This is Carter," my boss had said. "His electric vehicle startup. Don't fuck it up, Shaw." Graham had laughed, this deep, genuine sound that made everyone in the room lean in. He was brilliant in that effortless way that made you forget he was analyzing every word you said. During our first strategy session, he'd drawn diagrams on napkins, his hands moving with the same intensity as his mind. "You get it," he'd said after I suggested a grassroots marketing approach. "Most people don't get it." 3 months of late nights followed. Pizza boxes balanced on prototype sketches. His hand brushing mine as we both reached for the same coffee cup. The way he'd pause mid-sentence when I walked into a room, like his thoughts had suddenly scattered. "Let's drive to Oregon," he'd said one night, exhausted after a 16-hour day. "Just disappear for a weekend. See the lighthouse at Tillamook Rock." "When?" I'd asked, already imagining it. "After Series B closes, I promise." But Series B became his entire world. Our last phone call was brief. He was in Shanghai, chasing investors. "I'll call you when I'm back," he'd said. That was 5 years, 2 babies, and a lifetime ago. I never told him about the pregnancy test with 2 pink lines. Never told him how I'd sat in my San Francisco studio, hand on my still flat stomach, knowing I couldn't be another burden when he was already carrying his company on his shoulders. So I'd run to Portland, where the rain could hide everything, even from myself. The diner floor rushed up to meet me during the Tuesday night shift. One moment, I was reaching for the coffee pot. The next, I was staring at the ceiling tiles, my heart hammering a broken rhythm against my ribs. "Someone call 911. Jerry's voice seemed far away. "Where are her kids?" "The twins." Oh God, the twins. They were outside, waiting in our beat-up Honda because Mrs. Chen was sick. Through the fog of pain, I heard sirens. Voices. Someone found my wallet, pulling out the emergency contact card I'd never updated. Graham Carter? Someone read. San Francisco number. No, not like this. The hospital ceiling had the same water stains as our apartment. I counted them, trying to ignore the doctor's words. Advanced cardiomyopathy, immediate family, decisions need to be made. Then footsteps in the hallway. Familiar but wrong, like a song played in the wrong key. Graham stood in the doorway, 5 years older but still him. His hair was shorter, a few early grays at the temples. He wore an expensive coat that probably cost more than my monthly rent. But his eyes, those green eyes that had once made me believe in impossible things, were wide with shock. Ellie? His voice cracked. What? They said you had... My children, I managed. Are my children... Children? He stepped closer, and I saw the moment understanding hit him like a physical blow. His gaze dropped to the emergency contact form in his hand, then back to me. Ellie, how old are they? Behind him, a nurse appeared with 2 small figures. Aiden and Noah stood there in their second-hand raincoats, holding hands the way they did when they were scared. They had their father's eyes, his stubborn chin, his way of tilting their heads when confused. Graham's face went white. He gripped the doorframe like it might be the only thing keeping him upright. 5 years, he whispered. Oh my God, Ellie, they're mine. I don't need your help. The words came out sharper than intended, but the pain medication made everything feel distant and strange. Graham had been pacing my hospital room for an hour, alternating between staring at the twins and running his hands through his hair. You collapsed at work. You have a heart condition. You've been raising our children alone. His voice was carefully controlled, but I recognized the edge underneath. The same tone he'd used during startup crises. What exactly don't you need help with? We've been fine. Have you? He gestured to the monitors beside my bed. Because this doesn't look fine. Noah chose that moment to climb onto Graham's lap, studying this stranger with curious eyes. You look like us, he announced. Graham's breath hitched. Yeah, buddy, I do. The doctor returned with discharge papers and a reality check. Ms. Shaw needs rest. No work for at least 6 weeks. Someone will need to help with the children. I'll manage. Oh, I'm staying. Graham's tone left no room for argument. I'll get an Airbnb, whatever you need. We don't need charity. It's not charity when it's my kids. The words hung between us, sharp and true. He softened. Please, Ellie, let me try. So I agreed to 2 weeks, just until I could work again. Graham rented a house near Cannon Beach, close enough to smell the salt air from the porch. The boys were thrilled. A real house with separate bedrooms and a yard. That first night, I watched from the couch as Graham attempted bedtime. He held the storybook upside down until Aiden corrected him. His voice stumbled over the fairy tale words, but he stayed until they fell asleep, studying their faces like he was memorizing every detail he'd missed. I don't know how to do this, he admitted later, standing in the doorway. Neither did I pulled the blanket higher. You learn. Ellie. He sat at the coffee table, facing me, close enough that I could see the exhaustion carved into his features. Why didn't you tell me? The question I dreaded for 5 years. You were in Shanghai, then Tokyo, then... I shrugged. You were building something important. More important than this? His voice broke. Than them? I didn't want to be the reason you failed. So you let me fail at something else entirely. He stood abruptly. I need some air. Through the window, I watched him walk toward the ocean, shoulders hunched against the wind. The boy who'd promised me lighthouses had become a man who'd never seen one. And I'd made that choice for both of us. Graham's pancakes looked like abstract art. Aiden poked at his with a fork while Noah drowned his in syrup. It's supposed to be a dinosaur, Graham explained, frowning at the skillet. Looks more like a blob, Aiden said. A blobosaurus, Noah added, giggling. 3 weeks had passed, and Graham was still here. He'd extended the Airbnb rental twice, set up a makeshift office in the spare room, and slowly inserted himself into our routines. Morning cartoons, library trips, bedtime stories he no longer read upside down. I watched from the kitchen doorway as he helped them build a blanket fort, my heart doing that stuttering thing that had nothing to do with my condition. He caught my eye and smiled. Not the polished smile from his CEO headshots, but something unguarded and real. "Mom, come see," Noah called. "Dad showed us how to make it earthquake-proof." "Dad." The word hit us both. Graham's hands stilled on the blanket he was adjusting. We hadn't corrected them when they'd started using it last week. How could we? That evening, we all drove to the lighthouse. Graham carried Aiden on his shoulders while Noah held my hand, chattering about the hermit crabs they'd found that morning. Inside our sanctuary, Graham pulled out a flashlight and made shadow puppets on the walls. Rabbits and dogs and misshapen birds that sent the boys into fits of laughter. "I wrote about this place," Graham said quietly after the twins had dozed off in their sleeping bags. "In my journal, during those Series B months, I'd promised to take you to see lighthouses. You remembered." "I remember everything." He was sitting close enough that I could feel the warmth from his body. "The way you'd bite your lip when you were thinking. How you took your coffee, 1 sugar, no cream. That green dress you wore to the product launch. Graham, I looked for you." The words tumbled out. "After Shanghai, your apartment was empty. Your phone disconnected. I thought—" He shook his head. "I thought you'd decided I wasn't worth waiting for. I was pregnant, scared, 25, and I was an idiot who thought success meant working 20-hour days." His hand found mine in the darkness. "I built a company worth millions and missed everything that mattered." Old Mr. Keeper, the lighthouse's unofficial guardian, knocked on the door. "Storm coming in," he warned. "You folks should head home." But Graham lingered, studying the lighthouse's broken beacon. "What would it take to fix this?" "More than you'd think," Mr. Keeper said. "But it'd be worth it. Some things are meant to shine." Graham squeezed my hand, and I knew we weren't talking about the lighthouse anymore. The weather alert screamed from our phones in unison. Hurricane-force winds, coastal flooding. Seek shelter immediately. "We need to get to the lighthouse," Aiden insisted, clutching his stuffed whale. "Our castle is safest." "No, baby, we're staying here." But the words died as the windows rattled violently. The power flickered once, twice, then plunged us into darkness. "Ooh, I'm scared," Noah whimpered. Graham scooped him up. "Hey, remember what we learned about earthquakes? Same rules apply. We stick together." My chest tightened. Not from fear, but that familiar crushing sensation. I gripped the counter, trying to breathe through it. "Not now, please, not now." "Ellie?" Graham's flashlight beam found my face. "What's wrong?" "Just anxious." But the room was already spinning. My knees buckled. "Mommy!" The twins' voices seemed to echo from somewhere far away. Graham's arms caught me before I hit the floor. "Hospital," I gasped. The roads are flooded, I can't." Panic edged his voice. Okay, boys, we're going to." That's when Aiden bolted. The door slammed open and he disappeared into the storm, heading for the lighthouse. Our safe place. Our always place. "Aiden!" Graham thrust Noah at me and plunged after him into the wind and rain. I crawled to the door, Noah sobbing against my chest, my heart feeling like it might explode. Through the sheeting rain, I saw nothing, heard nothing but the storm's roar. "Daddy will find him," Noah whispered, and I held him tighter, praying he was right. Minutes stretched like hours. My vision grayed at the edges. Noah's weight grew heavier in my arms. Then, footsteps. Graham staggered through the door, soaked and shaking, Aiden limp in his arms. "Found him by the rocks," Graham panted. "He's okay, cold, but okay." Aiden's eyes fluttered open. "Wanted to light the lighthouse for Mommy." That's when my heart decided it had had enough. The pain was different this time. Final. Graham's face above me, shouting something I couldn't hear. Blue lights eventually. Hands lifting me. The last thing I saw was Graham holding both boys, his face raw with a fear I'd never seen before. "Please," I heard him say. "Please don't take her. I just found them. I can't. Please." Then darkness. Complete and absolute. Machines beeping. The smell of antiseptic. A weight on my hand. Warm. Familiar. I opened my eyes to find Graham asleep in the hospital chair. His fingers intertwined with mine. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. His clothes were the same ones from how long ago? 3 days, he said, stirring. His voice was hoarse. "You've been out 3 days. The boys are fine. Scared, but fine." There with Mrs. Chen. He squeezed my hand tighter. The surgery went well. They fixed it, Ellie. Your heart. Surgery, but I don't have insurance. I sold my Tesla shares. He said it like it was nothing. Like he hadn't just liquidated part of his fortune. Don't argue, please. Just don't. Tears slipped down my cheeks. Graham, you can't. I can. I did. He moved to sit on the bed's edge. Do you know what Aiden said when he ran into that storm? He said he needed to fix the lighthouse so you'd always be able to find your way home. 5 years old, and he's already trying to save you. Like his father, I whispered. Graham's composure finally cracked. I almost lost you, all of you, and I realized, God, Ellie, I've been such a fool. I thought success meant IPOs and valuations. But real success? It's bedtime stories and pancake disasters and knowing your kids' favorite colors. Blue, I said. They both love blue. Like their mom's eyes. He touched my face gently. I was so focused on building a future that I missed the present. Missed their first words, first steps. Missed being there when you needed me most. You didn't know. Because you didn't tell me. Because I'd made you think you couldn't. He pulled out something from his pocket. My letter. The one I'd never sent. Worn and creased from 5 years in my wallet. The hospital gave me your personal effects. I read it. If you don't want to be part of their lives, I'll understand. But if someday you do, we'll be waiting. 5 years, and you were still waiting, he said, even when I'd given you every reason not to. The door burst open. 2 small tornadoes in matching rain boots rushed in, despite the nurse's protests. Mommy! They climbed onto the bed carefully, like Graham had taught them. Dad said your heart got fixed. Dad was right, I said, looking at Graham. It did. Noah produced a crumpled drawing from his pocket. We made you a picture. It's our family at the lighthouse. 4 stick figures holding hands, the lighthouse beam creating a yellow sun above them. At the bottom, in Graham's neat handwriting, home. It's perfect, I whispered, pulling them close. Graham wrapped his arms around all of us, and for the first time in 5 years, I felt whole. 6 months later, the lighthouse beam cut through December fog like a promise kept. Graham had hired a crew to restore it, but insisted on installing the final bulb himself. The boys and I watched from below, bundled in matching scarves Graham's mother had knitted during her first visit to meet her grandchildren. Higher, Dad! Aiden called. It needs to see all the way to California. Our new house sat just up the bluff. Nothing fancy, just a 2-story cottage with a wraparound porch and rooms that echoed with laughter instead of emptiness. Graham had sold his San Francisco penthouse without blinking. Too many walls, he'd said. Not enough sand. I'd found work translating children's books from home. My desk facing the window where I could watch the boys build driftwood forts with their father. Graham had restructured his company, promoting his COO and stepping back to consultant role. Turns out, he'd said, you can run a tech company from anywhere, even a lighthouse. Now, as snow began to dust the beach, Graham climbed down and pulled me close. Remember what you wrote about building sandcastles? From my coat pocket, I pulled out the letter, the one he'd returned to me after reading it in the hospital. 5 years of keeping it close, and now it felt like ancient history. Read it, Noah demanded, though he'd heard it a dozen times. I unfolded the worn paper. I dream about you building sandcastles with them, teaching them to be brave and kind and brilliant like their father. If you don't want to be part of their lives, I'll understand. But if someday you do, we'll be waiting. We waited, Aiden said solemnly. And you came. Best investment I ever made, Graham said, ruffling his hair. Way better than Series B. The lighthouse beam swept across us, painting our faces gold. Inside the lighthouse, we'd hung fairy lights and installed a small library. Our secret castle had become our reading nook, where Graham did voices for all the characters and the boys corrected his pronunciation. Tell the story again, Noah said, settling into his usual spot, about the princess in the lighthouse. But I had a better idea. From my bag, I pulled out my latest translation, a new book just arrived from the publisher. On the cover, a lighthouse stood tall against a storm, and at its base, a family of 4 held hands. This one's new, I said. It's about a lighthouse keeper who forgot how to tend his light until 2 little boys and their mother showed him the way home. Graham read the dedication aloud. For G, A, and N, my reasons to shine. That's us, Aiden exclaimed. We're in a real book. As Graham began to read, his voice warm and steady, I leaned against him and watched the snow fall on our beach. My heart beat strong and sure beneath the scar that marked my second chance. Outside, our lighthouse beam turned steadily, no longer abandoned but alive with purpose. A beacon for ships in the storm, yes, but more than that, a reminder that sometimes the best adventures aren't about leaving at all. They're about finding your way back home.